So
Right.
I know the Barhead guys
Now
are familiar
I am
with
recording.
Teams.
Thank you.
That's right. I know the Barhead people are familiar with Teams. For those that aren't, that are on the Biz Apps team, for the members, if you wanted to see a full screen and not just sort of a 3/4 screen, if you press on the 3 ellipsis dots in the middle and then you go up, there's a halfway up the screen, you'll see it says enter full screen, and then you'll see just the PowerPoints. Otherwise you see a little mini Gill in the corner and who else is online, so up to you.
Yeah. Well, I've got a dual screen, so I've got the slides on one and Teams on the other.
Yep.
Okay, so any questions about those very general points that I've raised on that slide? Okay, moving on. So you've probably seen this several times already. These are the 6 broad topics that the MB-200 exam measures. I mentioned a moment ago that the course and the exam are quite different, and I was very surprised at that when I looked at the course for the first time today. This comes from the skills measured document, and if you haven't got it already, I would strongly recommend that everybody downloads their own copy of the MB-200 skills measured document. What we're going to do today is most of those first 2 segments. Although I say that, I suspect that in the time that we've got, we won't get through all of it. So today is very much about standard functionality and what you need to do as a functional consultant to make sure that what you implement is what your client ultimately needs. So within that first topic, the perform discovery, planning and analysis, these are the top level, these are the dot points that fall beneath that. And you can reasonably safely assume that you need to understand most of that lot for if you're going to do at all well in this component of the exam. Anyone, any questions about that lot? And remember, if you want to ask a question, you'll need to unmute yourself first. Okay. So entity relation diagrams. These are diagrams that show you the entities, which if you've got other database experience other than Dynamics, you can almost think of as tables. But an entity is, in Dynamics term, the account, the contact, the case, the lead, and so on and so forth. And then what are the relationships between those entities? So when you've got a well-structured entity relation or ER diagram, it will show you what entities exist and whether that's in the whole system or what's much more likely in a small part of the system to explain how something will work to a client and how they are connected. When we look at how they are connected, there are fundamentally 2 ways that they can be connected, and that is a one-to-many relationship or a many-to-many relationship. And even many-to-many is a bit fake, because wherever you have what superficially seems many-to-many, you actually have what's called an intersect entity between them that has 2 one-to-many relationships between the original 2. Does that make sense to people?
Jill, can you give an example, please, of a many-to-many relationship?
One that often comes up in, well, no, actually, the one I'll give you is contacts and marketing lists. So if you think about a marketing list in Dynamics 365, every marketing list that you have will have many members, whether they're contacts, accounts, or leads. And each contact or lead or account can be on several marketing lists.
That makes sense. Thank you so much.
Now, the way that is implemented to continue that is we then have the intersect or middle entity, which is marketing list members. So in that particular example, at a conceptual level, in the intersect entity, all we would have is the name of the marketing list and the name of the contact. There's a few other bits and pieces, but at a key level, and that then distills down to, we've got a marketing list that might be all contacts located in postcode 2000, and there's going to be a couple of hundred of them typically. Then we've got a contact, call him Pete. He's also located in postcode 2000, so he's on that one, but he works for an IT company, so he's on the IT employees list, and he's got an interest in ballroom dancing, so he's on the ballroom dancing list. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. A lot more sense now.
Anyone else got any questions around many-to-many? Or one-to-many for that matter?
I guess a question like in terms of exams, would they ask you about an ERD diagram? Would they give you a picture of an ERD diagram and expect you to understand sort of the links to the links to the links, or is it about common sense at the moment?
A lot of it is more, well, based on the exam that I did, it was more, you need to model this and this. What relationship would you choose? So it's about understanding how those things would fit together. So we could, obviously marketing lists is out of the box functionality, but if you imagine that they're not, you could get a question along the lines of, you need to implement marketing lists and the people who are on those lists, what relationship or how would you do that? And then obviously there's going to be some answers, and as with any multiple choice, there's going to be some wrong answers and some right answers, and you've got to identify the two, and depending on what the question's asking for. Does that help you, Karen?
Sorry. Yep.
Okay. One thing that it's worth remembering is that the apps that we build in Dynamics will, in the main, be model-driven apps. And therefore, you almost start from the data and the relationships that you need, particularly when you're building an app based on existing or standard entities. You need to be aware of how they're related to each other. You also need to be aware of what exists out of the box, so you don't get pushed into creating custom entities unnecessarily. And I have seen many examples of unnecessary custom entities. So being able to create an ER diagram of the key bits, and I will show you an ER diagram soon. I've got one that I use in a number of my training courses, has found its way into this training course. What a surprise. Another advantage of drawing and therefore thinking through the ER diagram is it will likely flag any errors in your logic about how the app should fit together. So again, if we go back to that marketing list example and assume that marketing lists are a custom entity that our client needs, when you're drawing that out, one assumes that you would realize that each marketing list has to have many people on it, and that each person could be on many marketing lists. And therefore, if we had that as a one-to-many relationship, we've got an error in our logic. And therefore, we need to backtrack and rethink the logic. Okay. If you want to see the actual ER diagrams within Dynamics 365, a lot of them are in the SDK. But I would strongly recommend that you are aware of the entity relationships, and you can sketch diagrams for most of the common entities. And then if you're working with a particular client, one assumes that by the time you get to this point in the conversation, you know whether the project is primarily sales, primarily marketing, primarily service, and then you want to be aware of the ER diagrams within that subset of the product. But certainly be very aware of the standard entities. And I've glibly put sales entities there. That refers to opportunity, quote, order, and invoice. Okay, so that is a very simplified version of the Dynamics 365 ER diagram. And you see that shows most of the key entities, excluding activities and notes. And I will come to those later on. I am not going to share that diagram, but I would strongly recommend that everybody can produce or does produce their own version of that. So I will leave it up there for another minute or so that you can take it in. And just running through this, the colors are not accidental. So this blue area here, this is really all of the customer. Then this lime green are those sales entities. And the reason lead is a paler color is because lead also belongs in marketing down here. This yellow is the product catalog. And the reason that these are that revolting yellow-green mix is because the opportunity product line items, quote product line items, and so on do sit between. They're sort of part of the product catalog and sort of part of sales. And then these bright magenta are the key customer service entities, and the orange is the key marketing. So any questions about that lot?
What's the gray territory?
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Swetha.
The gray color territory.
Ah, that is an entity, and it's a geographical grouping of your customers.
Right, okay, cool.
Anyone else, any questions?
I had one more.
Sure.
Is there sort of a limit on how many custom entities you can have apart from the standard ones?
There is for online, and I think it's 300, but I could be wrong. It's certainly a fairly big number. And if you are using standard functionality first, I really can't believe that you're going to blow the whatever the limit is.
Okay, cool.
I guess, Gill, one of the things you didn't do in the beginning whilst we're waiting everyone to jump on, you didn't sort of explain, you've been doing this stuff for 20 years. So in terms of...
I'm not that old, thank you, Karen.
Well, a long time. You said you were doing it since version dot or whatever it was. In terms of the diagrams that you've in terms of the models that you've built for CRM, and you say there's up to 300 potential sort of custom entities, what's a normal, like would you typically they make 50 of their own unique ones, or 10 or 100? Or?
I would say probably closer to 10, because most of what you're doing, if it's really a CRM type project, you've got an awful lot on that diagram. So again, this comes back to the know your standard functionality before you start creating custom entities. I had one project probably about 10 years ago now where the client absolutely insisted that we created a supplier entity. Now that was wrong. I knew it was wrong when the client insisted, but the client did I'm the client, I'm paying, do it this way. And it just went from bad to worse, because suppliers are a subset of the accounts. So all of these boxes have a definition, and I would strongly make sure that you know what all of these are. So the account is any organization with whom you, the implementing organization, have a business relationship with. And obviously there is a similar definition for all the others, but I'm not going to go through all of those with you.
So are you saying that an account can be a vendor or a customer, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And the difference between vendor, customer, prospect, whatever other terms are relevant to your particular environment or your particular project are usually and are best done using the relationship type pick list field. And like all pick lists or option sets, you can add in additional values if you need them. Relationship type as a pick list is worth being aware of because it is not on any of the standard forms, but it is in the standard system. Okay, any other questions about that diagram? Okay. So as I said, you should be able to draw the relevant elements of that to show to a client or explain to a client what you're thinking. Now, this is a subset of it where we've got one account and many contacts. And the reason I'm flagging this to you, because I'm sure you're all aware of that, but also to show how the arrows appear, in that we always put the pointed end of the arrow on the many side. So although each of those contact boxes represents one person, overall that relationship is what's called a 1-to-N between account and contact. It is also an N-to-1 between contact and account. So it depends where the focus needs to be, which of those you would use. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Now, if I put primary contact on there, what sort of arrow would I draw between primary contact and account?
1-to-1.
Any other offers?
What did you say? What would you pick on the where? Primary
what sort of arrow would I draw between account and primary contact?
1-to-1.
No.
All right.
1-to-many.
1-to-many, like so. So one contact can be the primary contact to multiple accounts.
Really?
Yes. Go and try it. Now, the reason I've asked you all to run up your own trial with the sample data is if things like this come up that you're not familiar with, I want you to go away and try it for yourself. So not now, but between the end of this session and next Wednesday, anybody who's got any doubt or thinks I'm wrong about what's on the slide, I want you to go and have a look at, and effectively within the sample data, you could replicate pretty much what's on that slide. Does that make sense? The absolute giveaway to that is if you were on an account, so think any account that you've worked with in Dynamics, the contacts are shown as a grid. The primary contact is shown as a lookup. So whenever you've got a lookup on a form, you know that you are on the one side of a one-to-many. Where you're looking at a grid, you're on the many side of a one-to-many. Does that make sense to people?
Yep. That is such a nice tip.
Sorry?
That is such a nice tip. Thank you, Gill. Never thought of it that way. It makes sense.
Okay.
That's a bit busy.
Wow.
This is another one that you actually need to be able to draw. So what we've got here is the key entities for B2B, i.e. business to business in Dynamics 365. So this is what you would need to show if your client that you're working with is selling to other organizations. So all of us work for mainly, if not totally, B2B organizations. Our clients are other organizations. They're not individual people. So it's B2B. So what we've got sitting in the middle is the account. Hanging off the account, we've then got many, that's why there's 3 of them, contacts. So there are many people inside this account that the organization deals with. Then we've got how we track the sale. So we've got many opportunities, many quotes, many orders, and many invoices. What we've also got leading into the account is a lead. So when we qualify a lead, it becomes an account and an opportunity. We've got the territory, which is optional, but that's some sort of geographic area that your account sits in. And you may have a parent account. What is important about parent account is it's not an entity in its own right. So where you've got an organization that deals with subsidiaries and parent accounts, all of those will be in the account entity. But there is what's called a self-referential relationship between one account and another account, which is its parent. What we've then got is a whole range of activities. So these are the emails, phone calls, appointments, tasks, and so on. So these particular lot were the ones done for some form of account management. And then these activities relate to a particular opportunity. These to a particular quote, these to a particular order, these to a particular invoice. Separately to the activities, we've then got notes with attachments. hanging off all of the records. There should, by the way, be notes and attachments here and here and here, but I ran out of space. So any questions about that lot?
So the only way an account gets formed is when a lead gets qualified?
You can create them as brand new accounts. You don't have to start with a lead.
Okay.
So there's nothing inside accounts. You can go in and create a new account. Absolutely. Now,
Okay.
One thing that is worth me mentioning here is whenever I say you can do blah, we need to add into that, assuming your security role permits it.
Okay. And assuming it's best practice as well?
No, because there are things that you can do technically
Okay.
that are not best practice. In terms of whether you start from a lead or you can go to an account, I wouldn't say either of those are best practice in a general way. It depends on the business model.
Mm-hmm.
One of my long-term clients is in the very lucky position that they do not need to do any business development. So the whole of the implementation that we've done for them is accounts, orders, and invoices. And that's pretty much all we've done. There is more than that, but in terms of what's on this diagram, it's only really accounts, orders, and invoices.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, minor change. That is what the architecture of B2C sales looks like. So what are the differences?
No contact.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
This center bit is now
Right.
contact, because we're now a business that sells to the general public. So if you think about a plumber or any of the trades, they sell to you as an individual. If you engage a plumber to come and install a new toilet, that invoice is to you as a contact. It's not to some company. Does that make sense? So with B2C, you've got all of this bottom bit is exactly the same. The difference is that the center point has become the contact, and we don't have contacts hanging off over here, because in a B2C environment, that doesn't really make sense. So are people happy with that?
Does the contact still need to have a parent account, mandatory, or it's just your situation?
It's not mandatory, and if you did have a parent account, it would probably be that individual person's employer, just because you needed to capture that information. But in a B2C, this would definitely not be mandatory. And you may well not capture it at all. But if you did capture it, that's where it would sit. That's why I left it on there. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense.
Yes, Jill, thank you.
Okay. What you also need to be able to do is think through required entity relationship diagrams for potential custom entities. And I will give you a couple of examples of that. Oh, I left that in there. So if you were implementing Dynamics 365 for a hospital, if you're focused on a doctor, what relationship would you use to link the doctor to the patient?
Many to many. If it's
But if the
multiple.
focus on the doctor, then it would be one too many because you focus
Correct.
on the doctor.
It is one.
From the
So for each
yeah, sorry, I was
doctor-
just reading doctors in plural, and I was like, well, it's multiple to multiple. But yeah, sorry, I didn't hear.
So from one doctor, it's going to be a one to many. So each doctor will have many patients. But yes, it could be many to many, because if you're in a hospital, any one patient could well be, now if you're talking about a really sick person, they could be seeing multiple doctors. So this is a good example of, if this was real, we'd now have to go back to the client and clarify whether it's likely that they would want to have it as a many to many or a one to many. And one of the questions that you would need to ask is, let's say we've got a hypothetical patient who is seeing a cardiologist and an endocrinologist in the same hospital. Do we want the cardiologist to see notes made by the endocrinologist and vice versa? Now, there's no right answer to that, but you need to know the answer in the particular scenario you're dealing with before you can decide what the relationship is. And I've chosen cardiologist and endocrinology. If we change one of those doctors to a psychologist, does that change the answer? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, and now if we're looking at operating theatres and doctors.
Or many to many, because they were all interchanged, no?
Correct.
Scheduling.
It would be scheduling, and obviously, particularly in the modern world where we're trying to use resources as much as possible, as much as possible, we would probably be aiming to use an operating theatre as close to 24/7 as we can. But you obviously can't expect any one doctor to work 24/7. So that one would definitely be many to many, and the interfacing relationship or entity is probably some form of schedule where we'd say, well, operating theatre 1 has got Dr. Smith in it on Monday morning, and then operating theatre 1 has got Dr. Jones in it for Monday afternoon, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Okay, any questions around entity relationship diagrams within Dynamics 365?
Just one, Jill.
Sorry,
Yes?
you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to ask, is there some validation provided within Dynamics for the entity relationship diagrams when you set them up?
No, this needs to be your understanding.
Okay.
And this is where you need to start going through and asking questions. So those questions that I ran through in the hospital scenario, is it okay for the endocrinologist to see the cardiologist notes? Fine. It may not. Is it okay for the cardiologist to see the psychologist notes? It may not.
Okay.
So they're the sort of questions that you need to ask. Now, that's one particular example, and I'm sure you've all got opinions, and you're thinking, well, if I was a patient of the psychologist, I wouldn't want the cardiologist to know that I've had 3 breakdowns in the last 2 years, and that's fine. You may well feel like that, but how does the hospital feel about the cardiologist knowing about you having had 3 breakdowns in the last year? So it's not how you as a patient feel.
Yep.
because you'd be doing this not for a patient, but for the hospital. So that's the sort of thing. Anyway, there was another question a minute ago.
Jill, you showed us architecture for B2B and B2C.
Yes.
Is there anything for B2B2C?
Well, it would probably be both. So tell me what you mean by B2B2C.
In the case of an organization that sells to both businesses and individuals, and this has particularly come up around when a contact changes their employer, I've seen strategies on best practice that are either B2B or B2C, but I haven't been able to find any literature on best practice when you're combining the scenarios.
Okay, what you find is when you're combining them, you end up with a combination of those two diagrams. So if you think about, well, let's go back to the plumber that I talked about earlier. That plumber may well come to you or us or whoever to fix the toilet, but that same plumber could also go to the RSL up the road from here to redo all the toilets in the RSL. So that plumber is actually a B2B and a B2C, because when they're talking to us to just fix one toilet, they're a B2C business, and they're going to invoice Jill and Edward, yada, 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 for one toilet. But when they go to Hornsby RSL, they're going to be invoicing Hornsby RSL for however many toilet suites there are in the whole building. So it's a combination of the two. You don't need a separate diagram. Does that answer your question?
And if Jill happens to also be the CEO of the RSL and so gets her toilet serviced as part of working for the RSL, would you just add another relationship down on the opportunity quote order invoice that links to the contact and the account?
You could do it that way. If you're assuming, and I'll let you as you're a friend, that I'm doing something a bit dodgy, so I'm getting our toilet here redone, but the RSL is paying, then that would probably stay within the RSL, and then the RSL would pay, and there would just be a note somewhere to say that particular job is on Pretoria Parade, so go there when you've finished. If it was mere coincidence that I have a relationship with the same plumber, and as the CEO of the RSL, I bring them in because I know they're good, it would then be back to what I said earlier. It would just be both models operating in parallel. So it comes down to asking the right questions and being able to really poke and prod and ask questions along the lines of, is it appropriate for the cardiologist to see the psychologist's, psychiatrist notes and to know that patients have had breakdowns and so on. And I know I keep using the same examples, but that's deliberate. But is that making sense to people?
Thanks, Jill.
Now, you raised another point, Kim, and that is where people move from one organisation. So if we come back to me, Jill, and right now, thank you, Kim, I'm the CEO of the RSL. So I am a contact under the RSL as the account. But if I get fed up with Hornsby RSL and Waitara Magpies offer me double the salary, I'm likely to sling my hook to Hornsby and go work at Waitara Magpies. We then get into a question, if you were implementing CRM for, let's say, the plumber, again, who has both Hornsby and Waitara Magpies as clients, is it important that he knows that now I'm the CEO of Waitara Magpies, but I used to be at the CEO of Hornsby? And again, there's no one right answer to that. but you need to know that when you're working out how to implement that. Gill, as an individual, worked at Hornsby RSL for 5 years, and I left in, I don't know, December 2018 and moved to Waitara. Does that make sense to people?
Yep.
And I think also you can fall into the trap of best practice. Obviously, there are lots of things that are best practice, and worse still, there are lots of things that are really poor practice. But there's also, you do need to be able to model it for your particular project. And there isn't just one global Bible that you can pull off the shelf and say, because you're one of those, we need one of those, and do it that way. You've got to do this by asking questions to understand the data. So coming back to that scenario where I was CEO of Hornsby RSL, got my loo done on the side while I was CEO, then moved to Waitara. You've got to get to the point where the data flow of that and what's important for the plumber is worked out. And that might be the same as another plumber that you've worked for, but it might be very different. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So the next topic that I want to talk about, which flows on quite nicely, is creating and documenting mock-ups. And this is important because a lot of people, if you try and have those conversations that we've just been running around totally verbally, the client won't get it, and you will end up getting the wrong answer to your questions because the client didn't understand the question. So if you can demonstrate visually, that obviously helps. The key thing about a mock-up is that it's visual and not logical. So whether you choose to do this as a sketch or as a wireframe or a very detailed mock-up, you will not have workflow, Power Automate, business rules, JavaScript, and so on. You're focusing on the look and feel. But given that you can put the business model of Dynamics or the relevant bit of it behind your mock-up, you can also show some of this. So if we go back to that, the plumber and the RSL, we could show them how, when he's talking to Gill, the private individual who needs her toilet fixing, he's dealing with a contact and this is the information he's got. But then when he talks to the RSL about a much bigger project because they want to redo all their toilets, this is the information that he'd be capturing. Does that make sense? When you're doing these mock-ups, you can use something like Visio, but probably better use the Dynamics 365 form designer, because when you use the form designer, whatever you create at that point, you can then go on and work through and probably can go into your final solution. Whereas if you do something in Visio or on a scrap of paper, you're then going to have to ultimately develop it in the form designer anyway. Okay, another question for you. If you were implementing a portal, which of these, and what you need the portal to do is enable people to post product experience information, enter issues, and enter ideas. Which of those portals would you choose.
So sorry, Jill, you're saying that in terms of their question, so if they had to do product, post-product experience, enter
Yep.
issues about the product and support, enter ideas, which,
Yep.
when you say...
They're the, well, you've got 5 portals. One's a custom, obviously, where you do everything. But if your client comes to you and says, we need to do these things via the website, which portal would you recommend?
So are these generic portals that exist in D365 generally?
The top 4 are portals that you can go and get.
Oh, okay, standard portals, out of the box kind of thing.
Yes.
And so you just need to figure out which one goes with the product experience, is that right?
Well, you've got those 3 requirements and you're going to implement one portal. Which one are you going to choose?
I assume it would be
B?
customer service.
B, customer service.
It is customer service, yes. Because the key, and this is where, so it's customers. So that's your giveaway. So the employee self-service is when it's more user focused. And obviously partner is partner focused. Now, this is an example, and this is also giving you a document that shows the features within each of the portals that are available. Okay, so now we are looking at doing the discovery, planning, and analysis that you need to do with the client. And a big part of that, at least in the exam, is identifying collaboration tools. I don't know why they emphasize this so much in the exam, but they do. So if we look at collaboration tools, these are the tools that are available to you to define requirements, which is sometimes done as user stories, testing requirements and the expected outcome from testing, and also recording and communicating defects. Challenges when you're doing this sort of collaboration is the people that you will be working with come from a whole range of different backgrounds. And I'm using the word background in a very, very general way, but that could include different languages, particularly if you've got offshore development or it's a global project. But within background also, you've got people who know the business very well, but have never seen Dynamics. You might have people that have done 1 or 2 Dynamics projects, but in a very different type of business to the one you're currently focusing in. So it's essential that you do get collaboration happening, and you need to find a way that is effective so people can do that collaboration. So options, and this is not the only option, but I would strongly suggest that for the exam, you have a reasonable idea of, at a top level, what each of these tools do, because you, both from the exam and you could go into a client and be expected to have some knowledge of some combination of these. Are people happy with that? So I would strongly write those down, and I would make sure that you know at a high level what each of those do by the time you come to the exam. So I'll leave that slide for another minute or so people can write down those 9 or 10 different tools. There may well be other tools that are also valuable. I'm not saying this is the complete list, but if you know what all of these do, you'll be in a good position for this part of the exam.
And there are many, I guess, marks around collaboration type stuff. I would have thought, I guess, it's more generic than anything else, but it's understanding what they all do.
Yes, and there are questions, at least at the moment, of choosing in a particular scenario which of these you would use. Alina, why have you put Skype question mark in the chat line?
Because they use Teams instead of Skype.
Yeah, look, I muted myself on a multiple levels, so it's still on mute. I'm just trying to figure out what to press, which button. Look, who uses Skype anyway? So people should use Teams, you know, the Skype is so.
You'll see possibly.
That's
Remember
all old
Skype
tickets.
Yes, but also remember what I said earlier, that some of the things in the exam are based on some older technology.
Is there dialogues or something mentioned in the exam or whatever?
Not in this exam, no. Or at least not in the version that I did, that I can recall. So my advice would be make sure you've got that written down and make sure you know the sort of top level function of all of those. And then, okay, so I've said all of that. Obviously, your focus wants to be on the Microsoft ones, but now there is a surprising amount in the exam about teams and groups. So it is worth knowing this lot. So groups is a platform and it is available for anybody who's got the Azure and Azure Active Directory account inside that organization. Whereas Teams is more of a communication tool and it sits on top of groups. I'm going to let you lot think about that while I go and refill my water. Otherwise, I'm going to choke on you.
Can't have you choking and getting any viruses.
See, there's a big benefit of doing this online. She cannot spread viruses to us, and hopefully we're gonna survive anyways.
Yes. I'm not planning on going 6 foot under yet.
The other big benefit, we can do it in our pajamas at night after we fed kids and no one cares.
Absolutely.
But
of course, if I'm wearing my pajamas, I can't toddle across the room to refill my bottle.
Can, if you've got the video off.
Why not? You can do it.
Turn the video off.
I will turn the video off. Okay. So this is the key points around groups. But I think the key point is what was on the previous slide, that groups is primarily a platform. Whereas Teams is part of Office 365. And we probably all know the functionality of Teams. Okay. Some interesting points there. I won't read that lot to you. I'll let you read that for yourself. And the bits that you don't know, make some notes.
So this group is sort of the back end of Teams. Is that how we see it?
The group is the platform that then gives the permissions to whatever is sitting on top of it. The key point about groups is if you've got Anna's your Active Directory account, you will be sitting effectively on groups. But to use Teams, you've got to have a license for Teams.
Okay.
For us is we sort of miss that because the licensing is looked after for us. But if we were putting together a project where not all, so we've got certain people have got access to Dynamics, certain people have got Teams, certain people have got Exchange and Outlook and so on. What is the best way of communicating with all of those people in order to do this collaboration? And again, there is no one right answer. So in the exam, you may well get some scenarios. Now, I did deliberately bold the SharePoint there, so that SharePoint becomes a key part of this mix. Okay, moving on. So groups is more Outlook-like, according to something I've read. I've not overtly used it. As we discovered with setting this session up tonight, Teams doesn't allow external people in. And that might be because it's sitting on top of groups. Now, a user needs to have an Exchange Online license to have groups, but Teams sits beside Exchange, not above it.
So question with that, Jill, we have client meetings all the time where we send out Teams invites and they can join in without them being in the actual Teams environment. They can join in a Teams meeting. I don't actually have to set them up specifically. So how does that work?
They must have been added to the particular team somehow.
Only on an invite.
And maybe that's all you need to do to add someone to a team. But I must admit that was where I got confused this evening because I was looking for the link to send out to everyone.
All right. I know we've been having it with the project we're on. We've been trying to add people into Teams so they can view like posts and notes and things.
I completely missed what happened while I wasn't here, but I can see all those people in using this team meeting. So what is wrong again? Like I think we should take it offline though.
Well, in terms of personal issues, yes, but you do need to know this sort of stuff for the exam.
No, you can invite external people to Teams. That's why we're having meetings, and you can invite them to Teams as well, and you can invite them to the meeting.
Okay. I think we need to be clear about what external means. External means outside of the team. I think what happens is when you send an invite or something, they do become part of the team, even if they're not an employee of the host organization.
Yeah, right. Let's just take it offline.
Okay. Right, so there's an example of collaboration. So which tool would you choose? And maybe we should look at this another way. Are there any that you would rule out immediately based on the question?
OneDrive?
I would agree with that. I don't know where that came from, but I would agree that Yammer is not really going to help us. So yes, that one would go. Any others that we'd get rid of?
Skype?
Skype?
Yep, I think Skype we could get rid of. So now we're down to OneDrive, Delve, and Groups.
What does Delve do? I have no idea.
Yeah, me neither.
That's why I've set you as a piece of homework to find that previous
What are you,
slide.
Delve?
You do need to know what all of those tools do.
Okay.
So
Then
I'm
the
gonna-
next step would be groups.
The answer here is Groups, but you should be able to say why it's Groups. So we got rid of Yammer and Skype quite quickly. You'll see why OneDrive goes in a moment. So there you've got an example of a sale, an opportunity, and you see how there, that middle box, we've got a group conversation. So inside this opportunity, we've got a group conversation going on. People happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
So now I'm moving on and looking at migration and integration. So what is the difference between data migration and data integration?
Migration is when you're going to deprecate a platform and you're taking everything off something else to go into a new system. And then an integration is something to facilitate data flow from one system into another, but both are being used in parallel for different uses.
That's pretty close. You did actually.
Data migration is at the time of go live or just before go live, and integration happens after that, post when you start using the system. It's more regular than data migration.
Close.
Okay.
The key thing is migration is considered as a one-off, whereas integration is considered ongoing. But yes, the reason migration is one-off is because we're moving data from some system or a spreadsheet or whatever into Dynamics, whereas integration might be between a financial package or something where there is going to be ongoing data flowing between the two. Now, when you're looking at integration versus migration, it's absolutely key that you remember and explain to the client that we cannot, if it's online, and most projects these days will be, write directly to the database. So people who are old and grey like me will certainly have recollections of migration being done at a database level. That was always bad practice, but it still happened because there were SQL Server people that were brought in to do it who didn't understand how you're supposed to do or how you were supposed to do these things. But now it is physically impossible to do. So when you are migrating data or integrating, whether it's a migration or an integration, you're going to do it via the SDK or the software development kit. Quite often, the data that you are given or export from a legacy system will need quite a lot of work doing on it before you can bring it into Dynamics. So the data can be a big part of the overall project. And part of that will 99 times out of 100 include cleansing and deduping, because it is very bad practice to just export a load of crap from whatever system they've got and bring that crap into Dynamics with people will sort it out post go live. No, they won't. And then they'll complain about Dynamics because the data's crap. When you're doing a migration, it's also a very good idea to check whether all the data is needed. So you may find that there is some old data that really has no value to the business moving forward and can either be completely deleted or can be archived. That also becomes relevant because with online, you do pay for your storage. You obviously get a certain amount of storage with, depending on the number of users, but once you go through that, you are paying so many dollars per month per gigabyte of additional storage. And it's pointless having that taken up with data that nobody needs, neither for referring to or reporting. So it is well worth trying to get rid of some data, or at least highlighting the benefits of getting rid versus the cost of keeping to a client. Does that make sense? Another point to be aware of is if you're dealing with an application or a data file or whatever it might be that has been in existence since Adam was a lad, does that still comply with current legislation? So a very good example of that for all of us, even those of us outside Europe, is GDPR. So if we have any European clients in the database, if we're going to market to them, they have to have given us permission in a GDPR compliant way. And if we hadn't got that permission, we either need to make sure that they're not marketed to, or they're not brought into the system, or we get the permission. And that will form part of the project. Separately to regulatory concerns, we've also got data governance, and that is referring to, for any given set of data, what is the master, and then who controls that master data set. So what is quite common is that a CRM or a CE or a sales project, the organization is quite happy for the sales team to own and to be the overall controller of customer records, but not product records. So it may be that the products and the price lists are mastered in an ERP system. And now I'm treading very much into Karen's territory, so I'll shut up and wait for her to run an F&O course. Another set of data that you need to be aware of is what's called either configuration data or reference data. So that is data that changes either not at all or infrequently. So examples of that is currencies, country codes, and that sort of data. But even within that, you may need to migrate it several times into a dev environment, separately into a test environment, and obviously finally into prod. And the reason I flag that you might be doing it several times is you might think, oh, that's fine, we'll just do an import. And then you discover that that same import needs to be done a lot more often. And when you realize it needs to be done a lot more often, you might change your idea as to whether an import is the right way to go. Something that I think you should all be aware of is the configuration migration tool. And in the reference list that I'm going to give everyone who's on the call, there's a document about this. So tools that you might choose to help with a migration. Native to Dynamics itself is the data import tool, and that does still exist. And in the current version, you can import from a CSV file, comma separated value, a text file, and what's new is you can import directly from Excel. Until quite recently, if we were given an Excel file, we had to save as CSV and then bring that in. But now you can directly use an Excel file, which solves a few headaches. Obviously, you can write your own tool, but I would try and find another solution before I did that. And there is also a number of third-party utilities, and Samigo is one that it's worth being aware of. If you've got to bring a lot of data in, I would strongly recommend getting a copy of Samigo and building that into the cost of the project. There is also, it's not strictly a third-party tool probably, that's a mistake, but there is the Dynamics 365 data migration tool, which is another tool that you should have some knowledge of. Any questions about that? Okay, this is a useful diagram. So these are the tools that will integrate directly or will link directly to Dynamics 365. And where that becomes useful is once you understand that you can only have OneDrive and OneNote sitting on top of SharePoint. So they will not go directly into Dynamics. So that is another diagram that I think you should all be aware of. Now the main bit, so this bit here, I grabbed from one of the references that I'm going to give you. This bit I have added. But does anyone have any questions about that?
The social engagement, is that just limited to LinkedIn or does it expand to other places as well?
I think social engagement has actually now been deprecated.
Okay.
But it was more than LinkedIn. It enabled you to post out to a number of the common social media platforms.
I'm scared to see voice of the customer in the next session. Yeah, I know these tickets are so dated. I'm so upset we have to pass this exam.
But unfortunately, we do. Okay, so some data migration questions. What I want you to think about is the 5 steps in order that you need to go through to do that, to solve that problem. So I'll give you a minute to think about it and then, yes. Okay, so the next slide is the answer, but I want you to think about it first. Anyone, any idea?
Not yet, Jill. Still learning. What about Mareki? Yes, is it Mareki? You should know this. You're about to sit the exam.
No, I've been reading the sentence now 5 times. Thinking it was a long day.
What's the first one?
No, I don't know.
Do you want me to show you the answer?
Put us out of our misery, Jill. It's getting late now. It's almost 9:30.
Yes, please.
They're the 5 steps. And what's key is that you are doing a minimal copy from production to the target. And that is how you don't take the data. When you do a minimal copy, you're taking the environment, but not the data. Happy with that?
Yep.
So this is then some screenshots that just show what I've just done there. And specifically, so this is the copy where we're taking from production. And then we're going on and doing the copy over here. So if you look there, what we're doing, so the minimal copy is customizations and schema only, no data.
So Jill, was this from one production environment to another?
It's production customizations to a new production instance.
So is that from a sandbox to a production instance, or?
No, it's production to production.
Production to production. Okay. So is that across different tenants altogether?
It doesn't say.
Okay. But when you're doing it this way, does it have to be within the same tenant or across different tenants?
It would have to be within the same tenant, because under environments, would you have multiple tenants? I think any one would only be one, but I'm not absolutely sure.
Okay.
Okay, so here we've got another migration question where we're migrating a translation file. So we've got a series of questions. So what file type of those would you probably use for a translation file?
So this one, I think, is a zip file and the XML file. It's between those two.
Anyone else? So that's question 1. But anyone got any thoughts?
CSV.
2 is what file format do you use? And question 3, maximum field length. So I'll go back. What are people's thoughts about that one?
CSV.
So we've got one offer for CSV.
I'm still sticking with my zip file or an XML file. It's one of those two.
It is actually a zip.
Oh.
So what about this one? The key is that it's a translation file. So this is where you're doing the translation for customizations and labels and so on. So what about the file format?
Probably the last two, either of the last two.
Anyone
Also
else?
same format as the.
Okay. And what's the maximum field length?
So Jill, did you say that it was a zip file because it was translation, or is it a?
You'll get all the answers on the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So they are the correct answers there. So zip is correct, same format as the exported file, and you can have up to 500 characters. Okay, so you now want to, you've got a custom entity named stores, and you need to populate that with 185 store locations. So first of all, you need to migrate the stores entity from sandbox to production, and then you need to migrate the actual store data. So which tool or technique are you going to use for each of those?
The first one would be an unmanaged solution. And the second one is probably an Excel file, export to Excel.
Anyone else, any thoughts?
I agree with the first one, unmanaged solution, and then I'd do a full copy. But then again, I'm a newbie, so what do I know?
I see. If you did a full copy, you'd then overwrite your unmanaged solution.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, don't listen to me.
So the correct answers are, you use an unmanaged solution to get the structure of the stores entity, and then you use the data import wizard to bring in the actual stores data. And it's also important that you realize that if the client just gives you this spreadsheet with the 185 stores, and this is what we need in the stores entity, to be aware of the steps entailed to get the store structure and then the 185 stores into the system. Does that make sense to people? Okay, looking at out of the box functionality. So it is really, really important that you do know the standard product. So then when the client comes to you and says, we need stores, or we're a hospital and we need to book our theatres out to different consultants or whatever, you know what is available in the standard product. It is probably 99 times out of 100 better to use standard functionality than to reinvent the wheel. I have rescued so many projects where the underlying problem was that the developer didn't know the standard functionality, but just developed what they thought was needed. And it's never gone well. We also need to be aware that Dynamics 365 Online is being updated pretty much constantly. Officially, there is a major and a minor update once each per year, so every 6 months. But as you're probably aware, those updates are actually being trickled out over a period of time. So it boils down to being almost continuous updates. And you are very limited couple of years ago, you were able to put off your upgrade for quite an extended period of time. Not anymore. Those of you who saw the presentation that I did, was it in February, Karen, when I did my April Fool presentation? You will know that now there is no pushback at all.
That's across all of them, isn't it, Jill? It's like you have to do it within 3 months. You're encouraged.
I think it's less than 3 months, but with the upcoming one for CE, it will all happen within April. And you won't get any say. So you will be upgraded when the data center that your tenant is in is upgraded. End of story. Don't bother arguing. There's no control from you whatsoever. Okay, so now there's some questions about sort of standard functionality, and just to make sure you're aware of it, and we have, surprisingly enough, run out of time. But so this question, if we send a workbook with 10,000 rows of data, but the user can only see 500, what is the likely cause? And again, what I'd like you to do is to try and rule out some of the options.
I think we rule out D.
Why can we rule out D?
Because I think if the role is only relevant when it's a dynamic worksheet, no?
You're right. Yep. Or you, yeah. So yes, we can rule out D. Can anyone rule any of the others out?
I think the answer is B, but I don't know why I would rule out the other ones, really. So I don't know.
Well, let's just have a quick look at this. When you look at answer A, answer is garbage. In
You
the
can have hidden ones.
We're being told that our user can only see 500 rows of data. So columns that are hidden, relevance factor. So A, you can rule out because it just isn't possibly an answer to the question. C, you can rule out because if you did do this page only, you would get 500. So your options for one page of data are 50, 100, and 250, not 500. And then, as somebody said earlier, security roles don't apply to static. So that way we've ruled 3 out, leaving B, and B is the right answer. But do people understand my logic as well as why the answer is correct?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll finish on these questions. We've got 3 very similar questions. So we've got a contact record and a user has created a note linked to that contact containing the word running. Can we use categorized search to find that note and hence the contact?
Categorized search. I'd say no.
Why say no?
Well, because I've been doing all this, we've been doing all this research in the last couple of weeks on global search. So I don't know if it's the same as categorized search. And the global search says you can only search on the note title, not the note context,
Okay,
like the words
global is
inside.
actually categorized. You're right, and everything you've said is correct, Karen. So no is the right answer.
Woohoo, my research worked.
So categorized search can search notes, but doesn't by default. So if you have a look down here, then we've also got relevance search, but you have to enable that. So now you've got a similar but slightly different question.
So Jill, are you saying if we turned on relevant search, then we could do it? Is that?
Yes, correct.
And can you turn that on for online, or is it only on prem?
Oh, no, it works online. Everything, the exam actually assumes almost totally online. Okay, so the answer for that one is yes. Relevant search is the way to do search through the body of notes. And then, oh, I missed that one. Quick find will not work. So quick find, if you did a quick find on contacts, it would not go into notes. It would go into whichever columns have been designated within the contact. And using it on the notes, you'd need to know what you were doing. So your average user wouldn't be able to use the quick find search to find that note. Okay, here's another one. So what do we need to do to meet that requirement?
A?
Yeah, that's what I was going to go for. But then, hang on.
C is obviously not the right answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, C and D.
And neither does currency
The whole
conversion.
number's going to have 4 decimal places.
Correct.
So that's a good example of get rid of that one and now you've got only 3 to play with.
Wouldn't it be B?
No.
No?
So the right answer is A,
Oh,
and it is the currency precision. Not because you want it to be the visible currency, and the base currency to most users is usually not visible.
Oh, okay.
So the base currency for most of our projects, the base currency will be the Australian dollar. And then if you're dealing with an international client, they will then have additional currencies for potentially the euro, the US dollar, whatever.
Karen, it's like reporting currency and transactional currency.
It is. We actually had this problem the other day with Vinay, with your stuff. We were showing too many decimal places. So I was talking about base currency to our configuration people, but not realizing that you can't see it.
Yes, the base currency, you don't use the base. The base currency is in its guts, really. And that the function of the base currency is to enable you to do reports and calculations on overall money. Because obviously, if you're in a multinational company where some of the revenue is Australian dollars, some of it is US dollar, and some of it is, I don't know, something like Thai baht, you cannot just add up the total of, say, all your sales, because it would be meaningless. So you need to convert them all to the same currency, and then you can add that up. And that's what the base currency does for you. Okay, it is now 20 to 10, which means it's getting very close to my pumpkin hour. I'll open it up for questions just briefly, but I'm not going to go through any further.
No questions, just thank you.
Okay, and I would strongly recommend that if you haven't got it already, get the skills measured document, and I will send you a long list of documents that I think you should set out to read before you do the exam.
Great. Thank you so very much, Jill.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Jill.
Thanks, Jill. That was
Thank
great.
you. And I
Thank you.
will,
Yeah.
well, I will
Thank you.
see you, hear you, whatever, next Wednesday.
See you
Yeah.
next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jill.
Good night.
Bye.
You okay, Kim?
I'm just unmuting myself.
Ah, okay.
Yes. Yes. Thanks for that, Jill.
Not a problem, because I think you're the only one still here.
I can't, well, I don't know whether I'm not the organizer. I can't see who else is here, probably.
No, I know. I can see all the people who are here, and now it's only you. But okay, so apart from Nat, who left the conversation, left early, I will send my reference document out to everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a
Okay,
good evening.
what's left of it? I'm going to bed.
Yes, fair enough.
Okay. Good night.
Bye.